Welcome to Drawing with Grids, 3D landscapes and more. We're going to be covering some fun stuff. I've had a lot of fun preparing for this workshop. Grace, I'll have Grace introduce herself and then I'll introduce myself as we get going.
Hi, everyone. I'm Grace Howard. I'm an environmental science and Spanish major at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, and I've been working with Roseanne for I think it's coming up on 10 years now.
Oh yeah, I
And
remember.
lately I've been helping out with her Zoom classes, and it's been a good time. So
Wonderful. So if you need anything, Grace is running things behind the scenes. Since we've got a lot of participants, she'll watch the chat. Right, what we're going to do today is I'm going to give a presentation because I want to introduce the concept of drawing with grids and also 3D cube drawing. And then we'll be hopping back and forth. I'm going to have you draw grids. I'm going to have you practice doing a drawing from a grid photograph. And then we're going to go into our 3D section. And I've come up with a fun way to make that a bit more live for you. And be prepared, have your pen, paper, actually pencil is important, eraser, and your ruler, because we'll be drawing some grids. All right, I'm going to start my presentation then. I'm Roseanne Hanson. If those of you who are new to my free workshops and other workshops, I'm the Art and Science Program Coordinator at the University of Arizona Desert Laboratory on Tumamoc Hill. My own website, my husband and I's website, is Exploring Overland, and I have my Field Arts Institute where I teach nature journaling, field sketching, pigment collecting to make your own watercolors, and all sorts of classes regarding the field arts. I have been keeping nature journals and field notebooks for science for nearly 40 years now. And the art part is relatively recent, and I'm completely self-taught. I love teaching. I love sharing nature journaling and the joy of discovering and learning about nature. And that's why we're here today, to delve into drawing with grids and other ways. So the reason I'm introducing the grid drawing is because sketching in our field notebooks, field sketching, is really daunting, and it can be very difficult to get a really good, accurate sketch. So one of the things I teach for quickly doing it, many of you know, is what I call the dot method, that I adapted from Mark Terrell Holmes, where I dot out the main shapes, and then I will quickly sketch in the main shapes, and the dots allow me to kind of index myself quickly. And then I'll use that, proportion method, actually measuring just with my pencil or pen to make sure I get all those proportions for say that saguaro correct. And it takes a little practice, and sometimes you get a little wonky, maybe if you didn't get your proportions just right. So there's another way to do it, and many art classes introduce this. It's called grid drawing. And what is that? It's often thrown out at people as, like, oh, we're going to do grid drawing, but nobody really does goes back and explains exactly how you use it, because there's some really important things if you're going to use grid drawing to make it successful and easy for you. So it's literally a grid is overlaid on the subject, either a photo like this or live with a see-through grid that you use. A matching grid, the same proportions, you draw it on your page. And let's remember the ratio, that same proportion or ratio is really important. We're going to get to that. This allows you to work from square to square with a common reference point to get your subject in the right proportions more accurately, pretty quickly. So let's look at what this looks like. On the left is a coyote photo. And I uploaded that to this free tool, drawpaintacademy.com. I think Grace is going to drop this link into the chat. And Grace, if I forget any of these, just interrupt me verbally. But so Grace is going to do that. And it overlays a grid on your photo. So let's see what that looks like. So I just did this little coyote study quite a while ago when I was playing with grids using ink, just water-soluble ink. And you can see how it works here. If you look at his left ear, you go from grid to grid, and you literally just stare at that square and you get that shape in there. And you go to the next square and you go to the next square. And as you can see, as I work down, I got the eye in the right place. I got the nose in the right place. That grid really, really helps you do that. And then you don't end up with a coyote with a pug nose or something like that. So that is great. Works really, really well. So how about with landscapes? It's exactly the same concept. Maybe you've got a grid that you hold up, a clear, we'll look at those in a minute, what kind of tools we can use for this. So you're literally partitioning that landscape into squares. And then this is what it looks like when you do it on paper. Your grid that you're looking through, whether it's a photo or a live grid, has to be the same ratio, or your squares are not going to be the same shape and you'll just get all wonky. So you can see how that translates with the knobbly rocks and cascading down and the grassland. You can get everything in roughly the correct space in reality. So these are the tools that work for that. There's so many of them available. You can search Amazon or dickblick.com, the art supply stores, or go to your local art supply. The one on the left I found in North Carolina at the Starving Artist, and it's clear, but it's red. So when you look through it on a landscape, it sort of turns it into grayscale, more or less. And it's got the ratio mark there is 4:5. We'll be talking about that. And then this other one I saw on Amazon, it's cute, it's little, can just clip on your keychain. It doesn't say what the ratio is, but I'll show you how we would figure that out. In the back of my book, Nature Journaling for a Wildlife, I include cutout acetate grids and a template for cutting it out with the grid markers on it. So you can just literally trace that in your notebook. Nice, quick, easy way to do that. And then another tool that some people might not realize is your phone. Most phones that have good cameras, smartphones, you can set a grid in the viewfinder, and you can use different ratios. This one, you can see the 4:3 is the ratio. And the grid shows when you're looking through it, and the way I would use it is then you take a screenshot of what you're looking through, not a photo because the grid doesn't show, but if you take the screenshot, the grid will be over it and you can use that on your field journal. And then I've recently come up with a clear palette that you can draw on with a dry erase marker and literally draw a grid or a cube I'll be showing you in your notebook, and then you can just trace that with your clear plastic over it with a dry erase, and you've got the right proportions, everything's ready to go. So that's another type of tool you can use for this type of drawing. Now let's talk about those aspect ratios, because that's really important, and I've never taken a class where this is taught. So, and then it's often just thrown out there, oh, you divide the width by the height. Well, what if you're doing a vertical viewfinder? Then that's a little different, isn't it? So the more proper way to put that is to get your aspect ratio. you divide the shorter edge by the longer edge. So these two grids are actually the same ratio. You take 3 divided by 3.75 equals 0.8. So the ratio is 1 to 0.8, meaning for the longest edge, 1, the shortest edge is 0.8 of 1. It is literally 0.8 to 1. So if it's 4 by 5, you divide 4 by 5. You still get the same ratio. So these grids are essentially the same, just different sizes. Different sizes, same ratio. So the next most important thing is, well, let's say you want to draw a small grid in your notebook, but you want a wider field of view. You don't want a 3.75 inch field of view. Let's say you want a 5-inch field of view. How do you figure out the right size to draw your bigger grid, say on your clear plastic sheet, your clear plastic viewfinder? You simply take the new measurement, so say the new long side is going to be 5 inches, and you know your grid that you drew in your journal has an aspect ratio of 0.8, then you simply multiply the new long side by 0.8. So that makes your short side 4 inches. So does that make sense to everybody? Write in the chat if we have any questions. Grace, let me know. Have I lost you completely? So how does it look? Everyone cool?
Marlene's confused.
Okay. Does she have a specific question? How should we back up a little bit? Let me know what the specific question is. Just waiting for that.
We're going to do an example, correct?
Yes, and that will, I think, make it a lot easier. So we're about to jump to that. Okay, so we're just going to go right now. I'm going to turn on I'm going to make my video my document camera so you can watch me also draw this. But what we want to do, let's see. Okay, there's my document camera. What we're going to do, you're going to draw a horizontal grid in your notebook and with pencil, because eventually after you ink in what you're happy with, you will be erasing the pencil marks. So take your ruler. So either use that template that I emailed you in the PDF. How'd that work? Grace, did that spotlight it, or is the view?
No,
okay?
It did not spotlight it.
I'm still
Everyone, if you go into Roseanne's, see where Roseanne's video is, where her dot cam is. If you, there's a little 3 dots in the corner, and you can hit pin, and that will blow it up and make her video big.
Okay, did that work? Yep. And I want people to still be able to see the instructions for drawing. So that's why I wanted to leave that up there like that. So it's pretty simple. Let's just draw. Let's just choose, I'm going to choose the 3.7 inch wide grid because it's easier to partition it quickly. So I'm going to draw a 3 3/4 inch grid, a rectangle. So it's 3.75 inches wide and it's 3 inches tall. Okay, I hope everybody's drawing their grid. All right, I have my rectangle here. And now I'm going to mark across the top at 1.25 inches and 2.5 inches. I'm partitioning it. so that I can get my grid. So 1.25 and 2.5 inches. If I do it twice, then I can trace that and make straighter lines. And then this grid's easy because we just mark at the 1 and the 2 inch. Okay. How's everybody doing with their grids?
Is the box 3 by 3.75?
Say that again, Grace.
How large is your grid?
I chose to do the 3.7 inches wide by 3 inches tall. And that's there on the screen. I left the instructions up. So draw a rectangle that's 3.7 inches wide by 3 inches high. And then partition it for the grids by marking the long edge at 1.25 inches and 2.5 inches. And then to get the vertical axis, you mark it at 1 inch and 2 inch, and then draw your lines so you get that grid like so. Okay, I want to give everybody time to draw their grids. So what do you think, Grace? How's it looking in the chat? Maybe when you're done with your grids, just put done in the chat so Grace can see. When we get a fair number of people who are done, we're going to move on to the photo and our drawing practice.
We got a fair number of people done, so.
Okay, so I'm going to move on because we've got lots of fun stuff to do today. Oops, there we go. So here's the grid overlaid on our landscapito. And what we're going to do is you're going to, this grid is the same ratio as the one you just drew in your notebook. So the concept is I start in the upper left. You can start anywhere you want, and you work square to square. So the upper left square, we're going to go really, just very quickly. I'm not going to do super lot of detail yet because I just want to show how you work from square to square. So I'm going to be marking only in this upper left square in my grid. And I want to just mark right now how there's that kind of lump there. I'm not going to do the individual rocks just yet. And I'm in pencil. And it comes down, and now I'm going to go to the middle square because there's only sky in the upper two. So, and then it goes almost diagonally, but not quite, to the last square in the middle on the right. And then the landscape kind of goes down like that. So coming back to the top, I'm going to then follow how it does that. So I've got the general shape of the mountain right there. Then I'm going to do the mountain in the far back, which is only in the square on the middle right. So I'm going to see, okay, look, it starts right about here. It goes up about halfway, zooms down, and comes back up. So again, I've sketched that in like that. And now I'm going to do the base of the mountain. So I've got that next shape, which most of the rocks. I'm going to just make a wavy line is like right below the that second line there. Just making a wavy line because that's kind of where the rocky bouldery things stop. And then I'm also going to mark the slope, the significant grassland slope, which kind of goes up like that. So I've got the main shapes now. And now I can go back and fill in some of the rocky bits. So going back to my upper left, I'm going to put that hoodoo thingy. And I'm going to get my other rocky bits about the same size. And then here I'm just gonna, I'm gonna give this, just being very loose here with my pencil, get that rock there, maybe that lump there, about there. And the rocks just kind of keep doing their rock thing all the way down. So I'm basically just making rocky. I'm not going to do a lot of detail here. I just wanted to show you how you use this particular grid method to get your proportions and things right. So I've got some rocks drawn in here. I'm going to go right here in the crosshairs of this section right here. And there's an area of interest of a fair number of big interesting boulders that I would put in there. I'm going to draw them in roughly. Some scattery bits of boulders, and then I'll remind myself there's some trees in there. And that this is grasslandy. And then this is all jumbly rocks in here. I'm not going to do a ton of detail, but you can see there, we've got our mountain pretty well roughed in. So I'm hoping everybody is getting somewhat down, get this down. Don't worry about details. We're actually not going to go any farther on this particular drawing. I just wanted you to see and practice how you use grid drawing. My next step would be to go in with a pen and quickly, ink in all these parts that I drew. I would first, making it a landscape-ito, I would go ahead and ink the border. And then I would be able to quickly go in, keep my nice lively sketchiness here. Keeping it very bouldery. Like so. See how quickly you can get a landscape-ito here. So there we go. And then I could go in and erase those grids, and we'd be ready to add watercolor if we wanted. So how's the chat, Grace? How are people doing?
It's good. Most of the chat is working out, getting the two videos together, half and half. So
Mostly I want you guys just to, you don't have to worry too much about what I'm drawing. Draw your own grids and work from the photo of the landscape. I wanted you to focus on your own work too. So I'm going to give people a chance to kind of get to a point. Don't worry about inking if you don't want to, that's fine. I just wanted you to be able to get to a point where you go, oh, okay, I get this grid thing. And this is a nice controlled environment, so that it's easy to do. It's a little more tough when you're out in the field, and we're going to talk about how to do that as well. And if you don't know, I use what's called a kneaded eraser, one of these stretchy erasers that you literally knead it to get a nice, like a new cleaner spot. And it doesn't have those eraser turds that are so prevalent with the white erasers, or don't ever use those pink ones. They just leave a real mess. So that cleans up the pencil nicely. So how's everyone doing? I can go look at the chat here. Wow, yeah, Grace, you have your work cut out for you. It's hard for me to look at chat when I'm screen sharing, but
what are the dimensions of the photo again, please?
We don't have the dimensions of the photo. What we use is the grid, is the ratio is what you need. Is that what you mean?
Yes, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, so the idea of grid drawing is you draw the grid on your paper, and we make sure that the grid ratio matches the viewfinder. So the only important thing is making sure that ratio matches, so that when we drew that 3.75 by 3 inch little landscape-ito in your notebook and drew the grid, it matches the ratio of the grid that you're looking at on the screen. So you can change the size of this photo all you want. As long as that grid stays exactly the same ratio, it doesn't matter what the size of the photo is. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, hopefully that cleared that up for you. Okay, so we're going to kind of slowly move on here, because the most time we want to spend is on the 3D cubes, because I think that's really fun. The grid drawing we can all keep working on and do that on your own. But I find that the 3D landscape really fun to do. It's very whimsical. It's a great addition to nature journals, and it's really hard. I'm not going to kid you. It's a challenge to visualize things in this new way. So we're going to go over how this kind of works, how we use the grid. It's the same concept as grid drawing, because you're going to be drawing a cube or using a cube to visualize this and draw it exactly the same way we did with the straight grid, only it's going to be a three-dimensional. But I'll walk you through it, because I've worked out a way that makes it a little more doable. So how did this kind of start? Well, this is John Muir Laws' fault. He put a wonderful little bit about this in his Laws Guide to Nature Journaling and Drawing, and very fun, whimsical 3D views. But I had the hardest time figuring out how to do it live. I just couldn't get my brain wrapped around it, because you literally have to visualize a cube, like a cookie cutter, dropping into the landscape that you're looking at. This is the desert laboratory on Tumamook Hill. That's Tumamook Hill. And you have to visualize a cube, look, this cookie cuttering right into the landscape. So here's the process. I drew the cube on the paper, and this was done with a photograph and the cube on the photograph because I just couldn't figure out how to do it. So I had to do it this way. So there's the cube. Let's go back real quick. I sketched it, and then using my pencil, just went section by section, each plane of the cube, drawing in the features that I wanted with pencil. When I was happy with that, and we're going to be practicing this, so we're going to spend quite a bit of time doing this. I inked in the important bits, being careful not to ink in where I don't want the cube lines. So just the part that I wanted to pull out of the landscape. And being whimsical and fun, showing the dry sandy washes spilling off the sides. You can have all sorts of fun with that. And then the final bit is adding the watercolor, and maybe something fun, like I added a hawk flying over it and the shadow of the hawk, so it gives it even more dimensional view. So let's look at some more examples of that. Actually, let me just go back and we'll look at this one more time. Cube, you're visualizing like a cookie cutter over the landscape. You sketch the cube in your notebook, getting your proportions right, adding the landscapes that you want to see. You can see where you can see on there, I erased and redid and erased and redid until I got it right. Not being super detailed though. And then adding in the ink details and little bits of interest, and again, whimsy and fun. And one of the things I like to do is to literally show like the underground part. So when you slice it in the front or on the side, I'm showing literally the dirt, so you can see the roots and where the wash comes down. And sometimes you can get fun and add soil layers. You're making this up, of course. You're visualizing. There's some whimsy here. There's some fun. So we're not, it's not exact. We're doing a really fun addition to your skill set here. So there we go again, showing how that looks. You can see the buildings barely see the buildings up there, the radio towers, the little valley coming down to the washes, and then the washes spilling out. So here's another one I did, again from a photo of Cave Creek Canyon in Portal, Arizona, down in the Chiricahua Mountains. And this one I did, a long, skinny rectangle cube, and a lot more of the cutaway because it's a steep canyon, and pushed the mountains back in the back. I went ahead and added the clouds, which you may or may not want to do. It just depends how you want to do your sky, leave the sky out or not. It's up to you. And then you can see the process there, the pencil, the light pencil, and then once I was happy with that, inking over it. And again, the one thing you have to be really careful is that you don't accidentally ink a line that is part of the cube that needs to go away. So you have to go real slow, really slowly when you're doing the ink part to make sure you don't accidentally, like if I drew the line at the very front that goes from the front corner, if I inked that into the top, I've ruined it, because what I want is just the landscape. You can do this with smaller things too, which is actually, I think, harder. I tried this on just a section of a boulder at Tohono Troll Park in Tucson, having a little fun with it to show, basically what I wanted to show was underneath the roots of the plants and maybe the animal burrows going in there as just a fun. This was a 5-minute sketch. But again, it's really hard. It was very hard for me to sit outdoors with my field notebook, my nature journal, and do this in my brain. So going out of like back in December to the Cochise Stronghold, I experimented with a new idea, and that was to draw my cube in my notebook. Oops. And then draw the cube on a clear sheet of plastic with dry erase. Literally, I traced my cube. So the proportions are perfect, right? Because I drew the cube first in my notebook. Now I need something to look through. I traced it. Don't have to worry about measuring. And then holding it up, I was able to visualize, boom, exactly what I wanted to draw. And you can move it around and find a fun place that works for a cube landscape. And I'm going to show you some tips on how this works and why it works, but things that you have to do to make it work correctly to use this self-made plastic viewfinder. So look here, just like on your drawing grid that we just did, there are certain points that match up, right? So that cluster of boulders, the boulders in the back, and the boulders that are spilling out. What I wanted was that whimsy, right? I love that, you know, let's show rocks falling off the side of the cube, you know, spilling down the grassland. So those show up there. And then what's really important, these stars that I just indicated here, when you hold the grid out, whether it's the viewfinder grid, just the grid of squares, or this cube, you have to mark, and I use my thumb, and then maybe the base of the cube, the lower left of the cube. I choose something in the landscape that I remember that's where my thumb goes. And then that's where, you know, the corner goes. So every time I hold it up, you have to extend your arm all the way out. Don't bend your arm because you're going to get it a different place every time. So you lock your arm like that. And then remember where you put your thumb, whether you're doing this cube or whether you're doing just the straight grid. You've got to have an anchor point. If you don't, you won't be holding it up in the same place and your drawing's going to go wonko. So remember those things. So what we're going to do, I'm going to do a demo this time, but we're all going to draw a cube in our notebooks just to prepare. Then I'm going to do a demo, and then you're going to come back and draw it yourself. Feel free to draw along if you feel adventuresome, but that's how we'll work it here. So again, I'm going to back up for just a second here. What we're going to do, and I'll demonstrate this, is how I take a section by section to draw it. And I'll start, say, with a main focal subject. And then I'll probably draw in the back of my scene first, and then I'll work my way forward. That's how you do it in a 3D rather than the flat grid, is we're going to choose spatially what we want to draw first, but using our cube as the guide. So, oops, it's going to show you these again. Okay. So we're going to draw our cube, and I'm going to walk you through how to do this because I want you to use these proportions, and then it'll match our virtual scene, because I'm going to take you to a landscape and you're going to draw a landscape with me, and we're going to have our portable viewfinder. So you need to have it match these proportions. So draw an 8 centimeter by 8 centimeter, or close enough, say 3 inches by 3 inches square, and place it to the kind of center left of your page. Don't put it right in the center because your cube's going to go off to the right. So draw that. Just walk through this with me once, and then we'll start drawing. So first you draw a square, then mark the center upper part of the square in half. Then you draw 4 centimeters up and 4 centimeters down. And then using that as your next side of your square, next square, you draw the square by drawing out from there, 4 inches, or excuse me, 4 centimeters, 4 centimeters. I was like 8 centimeters and 8 centimeters, or 3 inches and 3 inches. I'll demonstrate this, so don't panic. And then the last thing you do is your diagonal lines connecting your 2 squares. So let me, I will go ahead and go full share on my, let's see, video here, document camera. So Grace, I can't see my own camera. I think I have to pin myself. There we go. All right. Now, we're going to draw that. So whether you use 3 inches or 8 centimeters, it's close enough to each other. It's the proportions we want to get right. And I'm going to do it to the left side of my page slightly. So first you draw a square that's 8 centimeters by 8 centimeters. Okay, any questions on that? How are they doing, Grace?
No questions in chat.
Okay, so we've got our 8, 8, 8, 8, or if you did 3 inches, 3 inches, 3 inches, 3 inches. So on the top part, mark it in half, so at 4 centimeters for me. And then, since this is an 8 centimeter square, I want to go 4 centimeters up and 4 centimeters down, like so. Now, I want to complete this new square by going 8 centimeters out. See, I think I'm going to go up from here. So make sure I got it square, square. There. Ah, it's a tiny bit off. My square wasn't quite square, so I'm correcting my square. All right, so I've got my 2 squares, and then I connect them at each corner, like so. Like so. And the reason we did these proportions is because our virtual clear cube on our Perspex Easel palette is the same proportions. Looks like we've got a majority of folks are done with that. So now what I'm going to do is the demo part. So just feel free to watch me, and then we'll switch to you guys drawing, because I think it's too hard to watch the demo and draw at the same time. So, because this is the grid drawing, the flat plane drawing with the grid, the first one I did is a lot more simple. And that you can practice on your own using that website that Grace put in the chat. And we can also send, Grace will put all of it again at the end. We'll just dump all that whole, all the stuff that she shared, the links and everything, we'll just put it all at the end again. So I'm going to go back to screen share now. Okay, so where are we going? I am taking you on to Romero Pools in the Santa Catalina Mountains, just outside of Tucson. Grace is actually going to drop all the metadata for this region. So you'll have it in your notebooks. And again, we will drop all of this again at the end, but just so you have the latitude and longitude, the elevation, we're at 3,713 feet, what the lat long is, and all the other metadata for today. So, but how are we going to do this cube? Now, I experimented for this workshop with actually taking a camera out and doing a live video with my Perspex grid. However, it doesn't work doing video over my shoulder because it doesn't line up with my eye, and the camera wants to focus on either the landscape far away or the grid, but not both. So when you do it live, you're holding it up, your eye does that naturally, but a camera doesn't. So I wasn't able to do that. By the way, when you do this live, you do close one eye. And so if I use see, I'm holding this up. If I use my left hand to hold the grid, say, because I'm right-handed, I close my right eye because then my left eye aligns more with my hand. Does that make sense? Anyway, couldn't do that live. The video didn't work. So we've got our own virtual Perspex palette where I drew the grid, exactly the proportions that we drew on our paper already. And the way we do this, so there I am out at Romero Pools, and I want to figure out, well, how do I want to frame this? What's going to work the best? Well, I want to get the pools, the creek. That's a creek down there flowing. I'd love to get some really pretty saguaros. So I'm holding this up. I'm got my arm locked, holding it out in front of me with my right eye closed. So I'm looking at different things. So I could do it with maybe those boulders there, but I don't really like the way that looks. Like I kind of want a little sky in there. And I love that there's a beautiful saguaro not too far away. So I think what I'm going to do is place it, because this saguaro here where I'm placing it right now, the saguaro on the lower left, I'm going to make it so that that saguaro kind of hangs off the left side, because that's kind of fun. So I'm placing that like that. Yeah, like that. And I'm going to go down a little bit because I'm going to put some dirt in there now. And then I've got my creek here with a nice boulder there. And the creek goes up like this. So one of the fun things about art, of course, is we can edit things out. So I'm actually, this saguaro grouping right here, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to pretend they don't exist. So I'm editing a little bit. It's kind of fun that way. So I think this is what I'm going to work with. So now what I'm going to do is swap so you can see both what I'm drawing and the landscape. So I have to swap my share for just a moment here. And we're going to swap to desktop share. And I'm going to pull up my document camera. All right, so here you can see I've got my metadata. I always put the location, actually, I'm going to reduce this here. So, okay. I always put the location, the latitude, longitude, elevation. I would put the temperature in here, the sunrise and sunset. I always do that. So here I am out in Romero, and I'm going to, Grace, is this showing properly here with the both the screens now?
Yes, it is now.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to get that a little bit bigger so you guys can see it. And then let's see if I can zoom in just a little more. So I've got to, I'm going to be trying to keep this square, so it's hard to draw at this angle. So, you know, forgive me if I have to like turn my head or turn the page a little bit. So the way I would start out here and approach this is I'm going to start with my saguaro as the anchor point. I want this to focus a little better. Focus, sorry, waking it up. That's a little better. Okay, I'm going to do my main saguaro subject that I like here. So here on the grid, I'm looking at the grid. And then I'm looking at I'm holding up my Perspex palette and I see, oh, that saguaro kind of stops right about there. And this is a little less, you know, I'm using this as a guide. It's not going to be utterly perfect yet. This is my pencil sketch. And I want to, I'm gonna make my fake ground where I'm slicing it. Again, you know, we're using a little artistic license here. It's gonna come down like so, okay? And so I got that there, got my saguaro arms about a third of the way up. Oops, I didn't quite get, that's better. There, and there's an arm that comes like so. And then one coming out like so. And there's a baby, oh, it's like a little brother saguaro right there. Okay. Now, the next thing I want to do, I'll make it a little easier and kind of index things more quickly, is this plane here. I'm going to get that slope that comes down and forms where the creek goes up the valley. See, I'm looking just in this portion right here. And right here, I've got a real interesting saguaro I'm going to sketch in really quickly. It has lots of beautiful arms. Again, just with light pencil there. So I've got that slope. And then I also want to note that, again, I'm only working in this square right now. I've got a fainter, the slope in the background. So let me do this a little stronger here. Kind of a V going there. Oops, see? Now that was a good example. I messed that up. Not quite right. Okay, got this here. I've got another saguaro here. This will help me out. I'm going to put this other saguaro in. This tall, skinny guy. That'll help me a little bit more. Because see, I kind of messed up that first go there. So I want to mark this hill in the background. See there, that was easier. And it comes up here. Oh, not quite like that. You see how I do that? And then coming into this, I've got another slope here, and that's going to come up like that. Now I'm moving into this slope, excuse me, this plane, looking back at the back, so my back wall. I'm going to go pull the main slope through here. It's not too, I'm not going to be too precious about placement here. That looks good. Okay. Now, still working on that back wall. I'm going to look at my proportions here using this shape here and go, okay, well, that far dark mountain bit comes like that. Now I'm crossing this line, I'm going up like this, and I'm gonna pull this down here. I'm probably just gonna leave that like that. In fact, I'm just to remind myself this is farther away. I'm gonna give that a little squidgy, and maybe I'll go ahead and do this little bump here. Okay, that looks good for now. Again, if I out in live, I would have my palette here, and I would be holding that out and checking, remembering that index where I put my thumb and make sure I get it in the right place. So coming back here, so you hold it up, add a bit, hold it up, study, maybe balance it on your legs, add a little bit. Okay, so coming back to this plane here, I need to pull this front slope in. So we have to keep going. And as you can see, it crosses that little corner there. And there's, you know, lots of bouldery things going on here still. I'm putting my boulders in. And it's going to come down here. We're ignoring the saguaro there. And I'm coming here. So lots of big boulder shapes. I want to make sure I remind myself. And now I brought myself to the creek with my larger boulder there. I'm going to go ahead and pull that out. I'm going to add a few more. My bouldery bits, things. Do some shrubs. And let's remind us that the creek comes out here and it's going to spill off here like that. So we don't forget the creek just released itself from the cube and is spilling off onto our page because that's a fun part. Okay, now going back here, I want to make sure I remember to put the other, there's lots of rocks. This is a really rocky canyon. Okay, just don't want to forget those. Then this saguaro here, that's on another kind of slope. I want to keep indicating that we've got a slopes going on here. And here's an ocotillo, which is a really cool plant growing around this saguaro. That's another nice focal point. I'm going to put more details in the front, and then as we go to the back, I'm going to make it really, really not as detailed. It needs to look like it's receding really far away. So not a lot of detail toward the back. So you can see this is starting to look like the landscape a little more. And I want to remember that there's a bunch of really beautiful brittle bush, which is kind of blue-green in here. And these shrubs make nice interest in there. But I'm not going to do a whole lot of them. Now here, it's kind of hidden by my cube a little bit right now, but there's a saguaro right here that I want to put in. And that's going to help give me some more dimension here. And let's not forget, remember that I have this this is where the earth I've cut away. And I'm gonna have some fun with this one. I'm going to show saguaro roots, which are very broad and wide, coming in here. And, you know, maybe I'll see what it looks like to have them spill out that side too. And then you could really have fun. Let's go for it. Let's say there's an animal hole right there and a burrow. Let's make a burrow. And maybe there's like a little mouse or somebody in there. There. Because this is in the dirt underneath. We've cut that away. What else? Well, I need to do some stuff here real quick. So again, we're going to the back plane and I'm using these as guides. The only part of this line of the cube that's going to remain is right here. This is all going away. So there's some rocky parts I want to mark. What I'm going to do is, I'm not going to get super detailed, but I do want to show as this hill has some interesting rock shapes. And that helps remind us what's going on up here. And I'm not going to get any more detailed than that. There. Okay, I'm going to call that good for the moment. Now I'm going to ink in. And this is the part where you have to really pay attention. So the first thing I'm going to do is to ink the outer part and make sure that I don't ink in anything that I want to erase. So I'm going to start, I'm going to do this freehand, no ruler. Oh, not bad. I'm going to make that go ahead and make that a corner because that's part of the fun cube bit. This is the dirt earth part. And I'm going to also put that corner. And I don't want to do that. So I'm going to pull that. Here's my hill in the background. Not being super detailed here. And then remember that comes up like that. There. And mountain in the far back. I'm going to put into kind of one shape. I'm not going to try to pull that out into two shapes. Didn't quite get that shape right, but there we go. So that's the inked part there. There, let's get our saguaro in before we go much further. Oop, let's not forget our burrow. We don't want to accidentally erase that. I'm just going to give some suggestions of the saguaro rib bits. And that's just to give them their saguaro-y shape. Okay, let's get this other guy. Made him a little too skinny, so that's better. Get the ocotillo. Let's not forget the slope back here. All right, now these boulder rocks here are important for this scene. So before I erase, I want to make sure I've characterized a lot of boulders in the creek area here. Any questions or anything, Grace?
Yes, we just got a question of why you like to use a fountain pen for doing your ink work.
Oh, good question. Yes. Well, this particular pen was a gift from my husband 36 years ago, so it means a lot to me. However, I find it to be an incredibly useful tool. I can get, as you've seen, I can get nice faint. See the faint lines that I'm getting? This is just barely scribing. Or if I press a little harder, I've got it loaded. This is refillable, so I'm not throwing plastic away, which is very important to me. I would go through, if I used a micron pen, I would go through maybe one a week or more, because they really run out quickly if you're journaling every day. So with the fountain pen, I can refill it. It doesn't, I'm not throwing anything away. And then also look at this too. I can get everything from these tiny little whisker lines to a super strong line to almost calligraphic lines, because it's flexible. So this is waterproof archival quality ink. Oh, let's not forget the creek, which is a fun part. Show the water spillaging out here, kind of fun. Okay, I think I've got everything that I wanted to mark in. Okay, and now I can erase. Some of that is probably still a tiny bit damp, so hopefully I won't be making too much of a mess. This dries pretty quickly, but I'll start up here. Hopefully I won't smear anything. See how these erasers take that out nicely. Just a few there. So there we go. So I'm going to do just a quick watercolory, get started on the watercolor, because I will finish my watercolor while you guys draw yours, but I'll get started. And I'm going to use the watercolor to remind me of some of the places, some of the color things I want to emphasize. It's important now that, for example, I keep these rocks distinct. and the water bits so that I don't accidentally color that the wrong way. But that is, hopefully you saw how oops, I just spilled my water. Hang on 2 seconds while I clean up my mess here. Okay, so hopefully you saw how I worked from the back to the front by starting with my main focal points, getting those anchored, and then working through the shapes, using the shapes to place things. And you can edit things out. I'm not drawing everything, obviously. So a couple of things I want to do real quick. So am I going to add sky? I always struggle with that. I think on this one I won't, but I do want to remind myself, make sure that I leave the water, because I tend to accidentally mess that up. So I'm going to mark that first. I'm not coloring it in all the way, but just a little. And then the next thing I'm going to do, because that was a pure color, just my pure cyan. Those of you who don't know, I use the cyan, magenta, yellow color mixing. And then I use indanthrone blue and burnt sienna. And this is actually, this is not showing, sorry. I use the, get that better, cyan, magenta, yellow, and indanthrone blue and burnt sienna, the only colors I use. This is just gnarly, dirty yellow. So I'm going to be working from those, trying to get this to show you the color mixing there. Unfortunately, it won't expose both for the white and this, so I'll try to narrate. This is my cyan, magenta, yellow, indanthrone, burnt sienna. So right now I'm going to make a dirty, what I call my dirty yellow, by dropping a little burnt sienna into a very, very faint, very watery yellow. And the reason is I want to mark these boulders, and I'm not coloring in them 100%, but this is just a visual, because I tend to get going and I'll forget and accidentally color them green, and or you know, a plant color, and just trying to that way, that reminds me, boulders, don't mess them up. And so the next thing I might do to just to help remind me is I'm going to just do a burnt sienna dirt color. Burnt sienna is nice because it's still somewhat transparent. And yet it is a nice, pretty color. So that, now you can see the cube starting to pop. So real quick, I'm going to do a light green wash over my foreground. And I want a brighter green because the brighter colors are going to pop a little more. Now, I'm not going to make this like super perfect, because I'll be dropping in lots of other colors. But that's going to dry pretty light. In fact, right now I might even go in. I'm going to push back this color a little bit by dropping a tiny bit of magenta in, and that gives me a duller shade of the same color, just to give this some depth.
So we had a question in chat about why you didn't put the clump of saguaros that are in the center of the picture in your sketch.
Yes, I covered that initially. What I indicated was the great thing about field sketching is you can edit what you see. I didn't like those right in the middle. I really liked the pretty perfect saguaro on the left. So I can leave out the ones that are just not working. You can do that. It's okay. This is a whimsical, fun representation of Romero pools. So it's you can do whatever you like with that. Obviously, I don't know that there's an animal burrow there. I do know saguaro roots go way out like that because of my natural history. So that I could look up. But yeah, you can edit as you like. So one of the things I'm going to do now is I'm going to go with the bright green again, like I did for the front. Make sure I have enough here. But I want this to be duller in the back. So I'm going to drop in a little more of the red again. You see how that dulled it up? Because I want this to be more receding back. I'm also want to be careful. I'm going to leave those rock bits. I'll be making the saguaros darker to make them pop. I'm going to let that just kind of dry like that. I'll be adding some more blues and brighter colors in here because this brittle bush is a very bluey. So I'm just dipping right into my cyan here. And that's going to make the brittle bush are very blue-green. And I really wanted that they're right at the front. And so that's going to help pop this front bit. And then one thing I'm noticing is there's some really pretty grass yellows popping up here. So I'm going to just drop in a little bright yellow, which will dull out when it dries. So I'm going to leave that for the moment because this is going to dull out when it dries. And then I'm going to go back and do detail. One last thing to mention, I want to make sure these back mountains really push back. So I'm going to use that pure dark blue. I'm not going to try to add any plant green or anything. This will really help, as you can see, help push those back to the background. And then I'll do an intermediate bluey green in here. So those are obviously not really close and not really far, slightly different, like that. Okay, so I want you guys to take a stab at this. And while you do that, I'm going to keep working on my watercolor, let this dry a little bit, and I'm going to go in and add my details. So, and then go ahead and, unmute, ask questions as you go. Be sure if you do unmute yourself and ask a question, put the mute back on though, so we don't get a lot of background noise. So does that sound good? Like dead silence. Yeah. I'm gonna check the chat, see how we're doing. Oh, nice. Linda J said, I'm not sure if this is what you're using, but the modern primaries can be found on Greenleaf and Blueberry website when available. Yes, I'm happy to answer the color questions in a bit. But yes, you're correct. Linda, those are cyan, magenta, and yellow from Greenleaf Blueberry, but there's lots of other colors that work for those too. Greenleaf Blueberry colors are really hard to get. They are beautiful and very, very gorgeous to work with. But we can talk about those at the end. But right now, I want everybody to try to take a stab at doing your your landscapeito. Focus on the big things. Don't get down any rodent holes of details yet. I have trouble, that someone is writing, Terry, I have trouble making the rock and bush shapes loose enough. Everything looks like scribbles. Scribbles is actually good. Let me demonstrate that, that the rock things are squiggles. So that's how I did the rocks, is basically, so squiggles like that. These are probably a little too roundy perfect. Just adding a little shadow, dark, dark, texture. I'm literally squiggling. These are too perfect, but you get the gist. You know, I'll do my plants just with, there's an upper crown. I'll do another one. These are just to remind me of plant shapes that I'll come back and add watercolor to. I am just really doing squiggles. Squiggles are good, loose. I can go back in and fix the details later. And yes, Marlene is asking, are you actually, do you do this all in the field? Yes, I do. The dragoons piece that I showed, where I was holding up the clear palette, that was done right there on site. Took about 30 minutes. Again, that's why I adopt the loose kind of squiggly look, because it's much faster and it gets a nice lively look to it. So while you guys are doing that, you know, I'm going in here and adding some details to my plants here. And I'm going to go in and keep working on my color. I want to get my saguaros in. You'll notice saguaros, you know, there's a bright spot. I'm going to try to reserve on the right-hand side of the saguaros the brightness. So Marlene's asking, how are you able to determine what will make a good picture for your cube drawing? Grace, can you remember that? And we'll come back to it at the Q&A at the end. I think that's a good one to go over. Right now, I want people to just focus on trying to draw what's in there right now. How's everybody doing? Feel free to pop in or mention, is it like completely ridiculously hard? Is it starting to pop?
Cheryl asked if it is best to gesture sketch the main focal points, ink those in, and then erase the pencil lines of the cube before going into more of the details.
Yes, I think that sounded right. Can you read that again for me?
Is it best to gesture sketch the main focal points, ink those in, then erase the pencil lines of the cube before going into more of the details?
Yes, you definitely want to erase the pencil lines before of the main part. Once you make sure you've got the parts that you want to place, once the lines go away, then your indexing is a little off. But once you get your main parts in, yeah, definitely erase and go from there. Everybody will kind of come up with their own, way that works best for them. My camera is showing this a lot darker than it really is in reality. It's not this dark. And I'm kind of going to stop there because I have a tendency to overwork things. Don't want to do that. So I'm happy with the kind of whimsical look this is. Yes. How do you decide where the front cutoff belongs? I can't visualize that part. That's because I made it up. You can do that. I knew that right there at the saguaro on the left, that the saguaro got its roots there. So yeah, I kind of cheated there because I wanted to do that. And you can do that. I definitely cheated on that a little bit. But I think we could fairly say it's sliced into the ground most of the way down there. It's all relative. You can do what you like. Would left-handed people do the same orientation of the cube or reverse it? Great question. Huh. I don't know, because basically you're drawing shapes. And it really just depends on which way your hand is. It's more where you start, so you're not dragging your hand across the wet ink. Huh. Dorothy asked that. So yeah, I'm not sure about that. Try it and let us know if you're left-handed. It's going to have more to do with where your hand is placed on the page, I think. Sorry, mostly what we're focusing on is transferring the view through the shapes to the paper. And I think that it shouldn't matter which way you start it, but if it ends up being easier for you to do it the opposite way, do it the opposite way. Really doesn't matter in the end. You see what I'm doing? I'm not letting it go. That looks a lot darker than it is in reality. Adding more detail to my front bits. Okay. So what I'm doing right now, if anybody's watching, is I want the brittle bush to pop out a little bit more. So I'm adding dark behind where the brittle bush is. So that these pop, because it's really pretty. Brittle bush is a real signature look of this desert landscape in these canyons. So that bluey green that you see, the rounded shrubs are brittle bush. They're really pretty. Okay, I'm going to stop because otherwise I'm going to wreck it. Pah. And I'm going to give 5 more minutes, a little bit over 5 minutes, for you guys to keep working on yours, and then we'll start some Q&As. And those of you who want to keep drawing, and then we can, anybody wants to share, that'll be fun too. And you'll notice here, I'm using some darker watercolor. I added an element here that helps this look like the slice into the hillside. I didn't want to put a hard line, but this is definitely something you can do to make it look like, remember there was a, you know, it's sliced right here. So this helps it, this hill, I'm going to dot that, just have more of that look of being sliced. Oh, okay. Sorry, somebody said, Grace, I lost previous chat for some reason. Can I get back chat with all the dimensions? Grace, could you just copy and paste the whole kit and caboodle of everything that we've pasted? Could you put that one more time at the end here?
Yes, I'll do that.
Yeah, and the dimensions and things. In a few minutes, we'll go to the kind of Q&A so people can keep drawing, or then we can verbally ask questions and things. Because I'm afraid with this much chat, it's really hard to find things. Katie's asking, do you ever go back with pen when it's dry and add detail? Absolutely. In fact, when it dries, you know, I already did this when maybe you weren't looking, but I added, after it dried, I added some more stems in here. You can add a few more in here, definitely. That way, it's a layering process. And the more you know, like maybe I would want to add some more darks in there, for example, like that. Yeah, if we've missed your question in the chat, because there's so many, in just a minute, you know, we'll pop that up. Valerie asked, what is the disadvantage of putting a slice on the right vertical? Let's cover that when we go verbal, because I'm not sure I understand that. So Valerie, if you are still on and you can hear me, remember that. And in just a moment, we're going to go to verbal Q&A, and I want to cover that. And as Grace has already said in the chat, this is being recorded. We will post this, so you'll have a lot, you can go over it. And on the page where I post it, I'll also have all these dimensions the proportions. So if you do this, and do remember, if you use your own clear grid, you draw your grid on your paper and then just trace it on here, and you don't have to mess around with measuring. The only reason you measure and do any proportion changes is if I wanted a wider field of view here than I have on my paper. Say I wanted to do a little tiny cube on my paper, but a much bigger field of view out there, then I would need to make sure the proportions are correct. You'll quickly realize if you don't do them correctly. It'll quickly be evident that it's completely messed up.
This is Candace, and I'm left-handed. And what I do to compensate is I wear a fingerless glove on my left hand so that if I do touch something, it doesn't drag it across, and particularly with graphite. And the other thing that I do is I tend to draw on the right-hand side of my page and avoid the spine.
Those are great tips. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I notice even right-handed, I get sometimes on the graphite when I'm doing that portion, it gets really smeary because I tend to run my ball of my hand over it. Someone just asked in the chat, what is the name of the canyon? Grace just posted that right above your question. It's called Romero Pools, Romero Canyon. So that info is all back in the chat now, right above the bottom. In fact, and here's on mine, it's Romero Pools. If you still have mine up, you can see Romero Canyon in the Santa Catalinas outside of Tucson. All right, so I'm going to leave up the drawing and the pool, but excuse me, the grid, the cube, but go ahead and let's go to verbal questions and answers now. Go ahead and pop a question, just unmute. If we get a little bit of a roadblock, Grace can help people figure out who goes next.
Hi, Roseanne. This is Valerie. Thank you for this. It's been really great. My question was on the right vertical line of the cube. You mentioned how yes, there, thank you. You had just put in some darker green. And I guess I'm curious why you might not put a hard line where you put the dotted line and then color that like brown, like the soil.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Probably in retrospect, let's just see what it looks like. I probably should have done it a slightly darker color. And if I were being a little bit more detailed, and I'd probably do this when I was on my own and not trying to talk to 70 people,
Yeah.
is I would probably show rocks in here because this is a rocky creek bottom, and maybe a few rocks in here, but maybe grading up the hillside, it's going to change. So maybe if I darken this with the burnt sienna, that would be even more dramatic. I would probably grade this and make it look more layery, although you can see from the landscape, it's really rocky. So it's going to be rock, rock, rock all the way up.
Mm-hmm.
And I have other examples. I'm trying to think, I don't know if I have other examples that show rocks underneath, but that's a good point. Yeah, I could have made this much more of a hard line.
Yeah, so I guess is there an advantage to leaving a dotted line as opposed to a hard line?
No, it's strictly style, whatever you like the look of. I'll show you, I'll go back to my examples where there was a really hard line. Let me see let's see, I'm sharing my desktop. So let me see if I can find, no, I won't be able to call it up without bombing for people who are still drawing, We'll go back in a few minutes to the slideshow and I'll show you the hard line one. It's a little jarring.
Okay.
Even though I put a hard line right here. We'll go take a look, because that's a really good question. I think it's just personal style. It's like adding the sky or not. Sometimes I add it and sometimes I don't. Just really depends. The dramatic clouds in one of them was cool.
Mm-hmm.
But since there's not much going on here, there's no clouds, I think I'd just not add it. It would just be kind of weird. It would look more like a mushroom then.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. More questions? All right, no more questions? Suggestions, ideas?
We're all super focused on our drawing. This has been fabulous. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Wonderful.
This is Anne. I had a question. You were going to discuss the paint colors and the cyan.
Let me do that real quick here. Let's see. Hang on just a second. I'm going to get one more. Grab my other paint kit. So I'm going to change this exposure, hopefully. There, the paint. So it just blew that out. Let me just move that for now because it's kind of distracting. Whoa. Nope. Hang on. All right, just looking at this. These are green leaf blueberry colors from their handmade paints from Colorado. This is my original minimalist paint kit that I sell with Daniel Smith paints that are from a tube, and turn it this way so it doesn't quite match, does it? Yeah, they're in different orders, but it's basically the same. This is cyan, magenta, yellow, and in my Daniel Smith, again, a yellow, a magenta, and a cyan. The cyan color that I use is manganese blue hue. The magenta color that I use from Daniel Smith is quinacridone rose. And the yellow is chrome yellow or aureolin yellow. And it's just green leaf and blueberry just calls theirs cyan, magenta, yellow. As those of you who took my color mixing class, blue, red, yellow are not primaries. The primaries are cyan, magenta, yellow, because you can mix a red with yellow and magenta. You can mix a bright blue, but you cannot mix a cyan blue. You cannot mix a magenta, and you cannot mix a yellow, a primary. These are true primaries. And then I just like these extra colors, I call them indanthrone blue and burnt sienna, because they're really useful. The dark blue is just, as you saw from here, I just dropped dark blue over the greens, and that just creates a dark, interesting color instead of black. I can mix black with these three colors. I can mix black from just two colors. You can mix a black from your cyan and your magenta, but it's quicker to go in indanthrone blue and burnt sienna. Burnt sienna is basically a warm red. Anyway, it's very complicated. I can't go into it all now, but those are all the same type of colors. When Green Leaf Blueberry came out with theirs, I just loved them. They're so rich and gorgeous. So that's that. I hope that sort of answered it for you. All of this is on my website too.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
There was the question earlier about how you choose what to visualize in your, or how to choose where you put your cube.
Let's look at that. For me, I look for, so I'm gonna looks like hopefully I can, oh. Oops, nope. There we go. So moving this around, what I was looking for was, there's a couple of goals I had. I want a focal point, so a really pretty central saguaro. I wouldn't put the saguaro in the center because that's just not, it would look kind of weird. And then I wanted that creek in there. I wanted to bring it, and it flows nicely diagonally here. So I wanted that canyony boulders and stuff. And then I knew I wanted to have some boulders and some water spilling off the side because that's just fun and whimsical. So that's what I was looking for. Let's take a look at, no, I'm going to, let's see, hold on while I want to take you to the other examples. So is that showing the dragoons example, Grace?
Yes.
Okay. So again, I kind of had boulders on the mind. I framed this one because I wanted to try to grab these boulders to spill them off the side. That's why I plonked it there. And then I knew I wanted this diagonal here. Let's go back to the one of the Chiricahuas. Where'd it go? There. So in this one, I made it more of a long rectangle because this is a long, wide valley. Placed it so it was following the direction of the creek flowing. There you have, I think it was Marlene, I'm sorry, I don't remember. Here's that hard line. And it kind of works and kind of doesn't, I'm not sure. But that's why I made mine not quite as hard. Let's pull that up. Can I grab that? That's why I made this not quite as hard. I kind of liked it better. It looked more cookie cuttery. I don't know. It's just personal. Can you see that? Did that pop up, Grace?
Yes.
Okay. So you can see that versus this really hard line here. I don't know. This might have been more interesting if I had made it less hard. I don't know. Other questions? No? Okay, well, we're going to.
I have just one question.
Oh, sure.
You said this is near Tucson, Arizona?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Roseanne, this is Connie.
Yeah.
And one observation on what I did, using the cube and the grid definitely made me expand my viewpoint horizontally. Without the grid, I would have squished it by at least a third. I just, that was the feeling that you wanted to do, that everything was too high. Yeah. And if I had not had the grid, I would have compressed it more to the center of the page. Using the grid, using the touch point lines, it made that spread it out considerably, and was quite informing to me about how to draw those kinds of scenes. So thank you.
Yay, that's
for that learning.
Yay, I'm glad it worked. Fantastic. So just sort of wrapping up here, and then we can keep chatting a little bit. I just want to make sure we sort of formally end right at the right time, but use these tools to see better and different. Try the viewfinders with grids. Try a clear sheet with a dry erase. It's hard. Keep practicing. And I want to be sure to thank Muir Laws, Jack Laws, for the cube idea. Love it. And I think Grace is going to share something here.
So if y'all like this, we have a tip jar, and so tips are greatly appreciated. And I'm just sharing the link to the tip jar in chat.
Thank you. And I think, let's see, I'm going to stop the share. And if we're pretty much, a minute from being done, but if anyone wants to share what they've done to hold up your piece, that would be a lot of fun. You would turn on your video and then hold it up. So Katie, I'm just going to kind of grab somebody here. Katie, unmute yourself and speak so you pop up as the main speaker.
Are you talking to me?
I'm talking to
Katie.
Yeah.
Katie, okay.
So you have to speak so it pops up.
Oh, sorry. I could sing, I guess.
Okay, let me see if I can find you and pin you. Where'd you go? Do it again, Katie. There you are. I'm gonna, Grace got you. Okay.
Yeah. So I was struggling with landscape, mid zone, but I think with Indian Throne blue over it, I think that helped a little to push that mid ground back.
Yes, that looks great.
Thanks. But it was fun. I really enjoyed being restricted. And yeah, it's always hard to quit before you read it.
That's my thing too. I'm like, I need a stop sign that's just like, stop.
Yeah. A little person on your shoulder saying,
Sweet.
That was fun. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so Grace, if you could unpin Katie, wave your hand, next person. Let's see, Jackie Engel, I see, and then we'll do Connie. So next, Jackie Engel. I'm gonna.
Yeah, I thought this was great fun. I still struggle with my colors, but I just made a go for it. But this was just amazing to watch it evolve. Watching you, it didn't seem like it could work. And then it just did.
Look at that. That's awesome. I'm loving it. Thank you for sharing. That is super cool. All right. Connie, I think Connie had hers. Grace and
I did mine. I had planned on just doing just a sketch with colored pencils in lined paper. So it's pretty poor paper. And then I ended up adding some watercolor. But this is the depth that you feel like get pulled that I mentioned earlier. And I wouldn't have done that without the cube to really get the depth proportions. So that felt good. So thank you for sharing.
Good. No one's feeling too tortured, I hope.
Well, I must admit in the very beginning, it was like, for this, and then ate this, and then that. I was like, I don't know if I know where I'm at, but it all came together in before we finished.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay. I think
you're right. It is challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see, who do we have? Maureen. Let me spotlight Maureen. There we go.
Hello. This was wonderful. I had so much fun and stretched my brain a little bit.
Hey.
And I got a little bit of a desert fix. So thank you for that, Roseanne.
I know, I miss having you here for your spring visit.
Yeah, maybe next year.
Okay. Sweet, love it. Great. I love the little landscape pito. And notice, guys, how Maureen didn't go like, she didn't obsess on the details. She got the shapes. And I instantly knew where that was. And it probably took you, what, like 10 minutes, right? So,
yep.
Sweet. That's the whole idea. You go too much into detail, you'll actually kill the little landscapitos because they're just too small to do detail. So by keeping it nice and like simple, yay, love it. Thank you. Well, I think it's, let's see, I think we need to wrap up. Actually, one more. Ashwini, why don't you share yours?
Yeah, I mean, when I saw your landscape photos. I thought these are like really tough, like I cannot do it. But after you went through them step by step, I think yeah, I got some confidence. I mean, even though my colors aren't that great, but yeah.
Colors are fabulous. Those are wonderful. You got the blues to the back, the warmer blues to push it back. That's wonderful. Love it. Love it. Great job. Love everybody's. This is so much fun. Well, and if everyone wouldn't mind, if you'd like to, take a photo of your work and send it to me, I'll put your work on the website, and I'll be putting the recording onto the tutorials page. And if you're willing to share, I'll add your work to the page. That would be a lot of fun for people to see all the different ways we viewed the same place. So hope that everybody had fun. Thank you very much for coming on a Saturday, and keep practicing, keep sharing. And I'm always happy to answer questions. So email me questions, whatever you need is more than fun, tons of fun. And share on the Nature Journal Club or on Facebook, or the smaller group that I started for beginners called Nature Journaling for a Wildlife. If you're too shy to share on the really big forum where there's it gets scary because there's all the professional artists, and if you want a really small place where there's only beginners, join us on that one. So all right, everyone, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye.